Welcome. This is Dr. Jose Bolanos with VentureMed. We're an angel investment group that is focused on healthcare innovation. And we are located in Silicon Valley, and I'm very excited to bring a brand new healthcare startup to you today called Healium. And today on our panel, we have Dr. Carl Spitzer, Dr. Craig Rosenberg. He's a PhD. We have Jeffrey Rogers, who's with MedX Forward, an investment platform for angel investors focused on healthcare space. And Salman Hamid, who is a VentureMed advisor and engineering wizard. If you would, gentlemen, if you would start. Salman, would you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, my name is Salman Hamid, and I have about 25 years of medical device experience, including Stryker, and the last company that I'm working with is called Avantis Medical. My background is electrical computer engineering, I have also MBA in concentrating in strategy. I am mainly working with Avantis to connect Avantis with the different business developers of strategic partnership, and also doing a lot of research and development for the company.
Very exciting. Also, you were past CEO of Chest Innovations, which is also another very innovative company that's moving forward. Yes, Jeffrey Rogers, please.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. This is Jeffrey Rogers. I run MedX Forward. MedX Forward is a funding platform. It's a software as a service company. And we work with organizations such as VentureMed to connect their small business members with various forms of capital. In this case, we're working with new companies looking for their first or seed round before a larger round, and we're doing funding in terms of convertible notes.
Great, fantastic. Next, I'd like to introduce Craig Rosenberg.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Rosenberg, and I'm the CTO of Healium. My background is human factors and user interface design, modeling and simulation, and software engineering. And I've been working with Dr. Carl Spitzer for the last year on Healium.
Fantastic, and we're really excited to hear your presentation. We also just had Philip Pellerin, who joined us and left quickly. We'll get him to introduce himself in just a bit. Carl, would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. My name's Carl Spitzer, and I am the CEO and co-founder of Healium, along with Craig, and I have a long technology background, starting to develop software on mainframe computers back in the late 70s. Have a clinical background as a practicing emergency physician for quite some time. For the last 3.5 years, I've been the Chief Medical Information Officer at Marin General Hospital, as well as a practicing emergency physician there. And in deploying electronic medical records of other people's creation, I've realized that the usability piece is a big problem. So Craig and I got together to address the usability of electronic medical records for clinicians and formed Healium to do that. So happy to be here.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we go ahead and proceed with your presentation. We're going to have you talk about your technology, and then we're going to have you give us a demo. And following that, we'll have a lively discussion about the technology and its implications for healthcare as technology advances and makes things better for all of us.
Sounds good. Okay, well, let me share my screen here and get into our slide deck. And I'm going to... Are you guys seeing our main slide?
Perfect.
Excellent. So we're Healium, and we are addressing the problem of usability in electronic medical records. And a recent study published in the American Journal of Emergency Medicine and reprinted in Becker's Hospital Review showed that emergency physicians, so my brethren, spend 44% of their time in EMRs and click 4,000 times in a 10-hour shift. The result being that EMRs are a technology that significantly worsen professional satisfaction in multiple ways. Big study that came out of the RAND Corporation just last fall that was sponsored by the AMA showed that EMRs drag on productivity and professional satisfaction. So that's really what we're going after. And we're going after the front end of the electronic medical record to address the physician productivity and satisfaction piece, as well as a couple of other things. So we are focused on wearables as a solution to the EMR front end problem because they're present, but they don't get between the doctor and the patient. So, you know, we've heard patients complain that they're in the exam room with a doctor and the doctor spent all of their time looking at the computer and none of their time talking to them. Well, with wearables, you don't have that issue because the computer is there, but it's out of the way. It's always accessible. It's on your body, so it listens to you and is available when you need it. We can leverage context and get a lot of meta information about the physician and the patients, where the physician is in the hospital, their schedule, etc., and bring that into the information that's presented to the clinician. You don't click or type. In fact, you couldn't click or type if you tried. And it's hands-free. So for procedural physicians like emergency physicians, intensive care unit doctors, surgeons, etc., that's great. You get to interact with the electronic medical record without having to use the outdated mouse keyboard paradigm. So we are here to produce cutting-edge productivity tools that require no training and integrate into the EMR, that increase the doctor's efficiency and work satisfaction and decrease time in sort of clerical menial overhead tasks. We want to improve the doctor-patient relationship by getting the technology out of the way. In fact, making the technology seem like it's disappeared, and improve patient safety and quality of care. So next, I'm going to take you through a little clinical scenario that we have developed that gives you the roadmap for Healium. We took my stepson Harrison to the emergency department, and he was gracious enough to let us put him into a coma, and we resuscitated him using Healium's technology. So what you see over here is what I'm saying to the device. So here I say, okay, Healium, ID the patient. I then look at Harrison's wristband and read the QR code on his wristband, and up comes Harrison's summary card, and I confirm that we're working with the right patient. So there's a big patient safety advantage in having the software actually take care of the patient ID for you. Here we're consuming the triage note that was generated by the nurse elsewhere in the electronic medical record, and down the line we'll be developing Healium for nursing as well, so they'll be able to use Healium to actually enter this information into the EMR. We see a kid who's got a rapid heart rate, a high blood sugar, high fever, low oxygen, who became unresponsive this morning. We want to know about their medical history, and Healium sends that to our display. He's a type 1 diabetic who's on insulin and is allergic to amoxicillin. We then evaluate him and use the technology to enter orders to evaluate the patient, in other words, initiate a diagnostic workup using voice. So I'm ordering a CBC, a chest x-ray, chemistry panel, and all of these diagnostic tests are then echoed in the display to make sure that I've gotten them correct, or to make sure that Healium's gotten them correct. And the reality is that we've just saved ourselves 25 or 30 clicks in the EMR, so that's a big time saver right here. We can use Healium for guidance, expert guidance on critical procedures. One of the trickiest things to do is critical procedures on kids because they're drug doses, etc., are based on weight, and you have to do calculations on the fly, and you have to remember what the drugs are, as well as the doses in milligram per kilogram. So if I have this previously set up, then, and I know that I'm working with Harrison, then based on his age and weight, I get the information in my heads-up display. I know exactly what equipment to use and what drugs to use to go through the very critical procedure of actually sedating this kid and paralyzing his muscles so I can breathe for him and put him on a breathing tube. Here we're pulling lab results out of the system. He's got a high white blood cell count. He's got multiple abnormalities of his electrolytes that point to an acid buildup in his blood and high blood sugar. But what really makes Healium shine is the ability to push information to me when I'm multitasking. So I'm not taking care of just Harrison. Remember, I'm an ER doctor, so I'm taking care of 8 or 10 patients at a time. So I've initiated Harrison's workup while I've gone off to see the lady with the ankle injury. Meanwhile, Harrison's x-ray comes back. I get a ping in my heads-up display. I can see the thumbnail there. I can get the inclination that he's got a pneumonia. I can have that sent to my handheld display, see that in a larger format, whether this be my Android phone, Android tablet, and essentially any device that's more appropriate for viewing larger quantities of information. Here I'm using Healium's voice recognition to initiate orders for therapeutics. The device alerts me to a potential cross-reaction between the medication that I've prescribed and the amoxicillin that he's allergic to, and I'm aware of that interaction, and then of course I choose whether or not to proceed and use that medication based on my own clinical judgment. As a device that I'm wearing, I can use Healium to communicate. Here I'm using Healium to call the pediatric intensive care doctor and present the clinical scenario to pass on Harrison's care so that Dr. Kumar knows exactly what's going on and is able to assume care with full knowledge of the history. She can also see a live video feed so I can send her pictures of Harrison. We admit Harrison to the ICU. He's under expert care, and he's gets better and is back on the beach in 10 days. So that's a scenario of much of what we want, what we have for the roadmap for the 1.0 functionality of Healium. This is myself. I'm the CEO and co-founder. Craig is the CTO and co-founder. We have an excellent engineer named Bill Tollett who's on board. And we have a really spectacular advisory board, including Ramesh Balakrishnan, who's the CEO and founder of Thrasis, that produces population health management tools, as well as an HIE, as well as a hospital information system that's being sold overseas. Steve Kurd is the CEO of Care and Sync, that produces a care coordination platform. Care and Sync was just acquired by Hearst Medical Media and is part of the Zincs family as of a few weeks ago. Nick Vanter-Hayden is the Chief Medical Information Officer for Nuance. Nuance produces, of course, speech recognition technology, and we use speech recognition heavily in our application, so he's a natural for us. We've added a fourth advisor in Prentice Tom, who's the Chief Medical Officer for CEP America. CEP America is a 2,000-plus physician, emergency physician and hospitalist group, and Prentice is a real visionary in terms of technology and EMRs. So what we're doing here, we're running on heads-up displays and mobile devices. We push information rather than you're having to pull it out of the EMR. We use a spoken language interface to eliminate menus. We use clinical language understanding for order entry and eventually for documentation. It's obviously hands-free viewing of results and patient records. We are moving in our beyond 1.0 roadmap to abstract the skeleton of a billable emergency medical record or medical record in real time, so that the interaction with the patient, my conversation with the patient, becomes the medical record, and we abstract that using speech to text and clinical language understanding. We provide feedback you saw in care protocols, best practices. We talk to major EMRs. We have an agreement in place right now with one commercial EMR vendor and another open source EMR vendor. We leverage context heavily through Wi-Fi and Bluetooth Low Energy, geolocation, advanced patient ID, etc. So we have a big opportunity. The EMR market's worth over $20 billion a year. Current EMRs, as we've seen, make clinicians unhappy. We help fix it. And if we can capture 0.25% of the EMR market, we have a $50 million a year business, and we think we're being conservative there. Our value proposition is that physician time is valuable, and a lot of that time is wasted by EMRs. We reclaim wasted physician time, and at a $250,000 a year salary for a physician, if we save 3 minutes of every hour of work, we've created $12,500 a year of value for that physician, plus the intangibles in their work satisfaction. We will use tiered site license fees based on total and concurrent users with 15% annual maintenance fees, and premium transcription service per line fees. Oops, my display just froze.
Oh,
you guys hear me?
We can see you.
You can see me, but my display froze.
Okay.
Right. What do I do with that then?
Are you on a Mac?
Yeah, I'm on Mac. I've never seen that happen.
Let's see.
My cursor is frozen even.
Well, you know what we could do is we could actually have you restart. If you have to restart your computer, we'll actually have Craig give a little discourse on, we'll introduce Philip, and we can have Craig intermittently, why don't we have him discuss some of the technology, and then we can bring you back on and in a minute or so, okay?
Sure. Yeah, I will, I'm going to stay on for the time being. Let's see if I can get out of this thing. Go ahead.
Okay. Craig? Oh, before we get started, I want to actually hold on a second. I would like to introduce Philip. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm going to unmute you right now. Hold on one second. Hold on. You're still muted. Can you unmute yourself, Philip? No? It says you're unfortunately muted. Okay. Well, what we'll do is Philip Pellerin is an advisor with VentureMed, and he has been with Cardinal Health in the past, and he's part of the network with. Sorry, Philip. He's with the network at Sutter, and he's an expert in yeah, so he's an expert. Sorry, I'm reading the group chat here. He's an expert in supply chain management. So we'll see if we can do that. In the meantime, Craig, could you unmute yourself?
Hello.
There you go. And you're the CTO. Could you give us a little rundown on your experience with the technology and how things have been going?
Sure. Well, my experience with the technology is very long-standing. I've actually I study virtual environments and augmented reality, and have done so since the late '80s, actually. So it's an area that I'm fascinated by and see a tremendous amount of potential. I studied that at the master's and PhD level, augmented environments and virtual environments. So when I met Carl and he told me of his idea of using augmented reality and wearables in the medical space, I became very excited to work with him to make it a reality. As far as the technology that we're using, we're first focusing on Google Glass because we feel that it's likely to be it's likely to be the first wearable that will have the potential for making significant market inroads, although there's a number of other that are coming along, some with much higher resolution that we'll be able to target as well for deploying our software on. There's nothing really about the concept or the idea that targets one particular front end or one particular back end. Back end meaning which EMR we're integrating with, or front end meaning which display device we're going to be integrating with.
Now the video part of this, it's already kind of built into the system where you can stream videos pretty readily and obviously communicate with people. But your biggest challenge, was it at this point with the EMRs, is it the integration process with the EMRs? And right now I know that you're integrating with a couple of them where you can interface, see images, pull up labs.
That's correct. And I apologize for that phone ringing.
Switch on. Are we okay for a demo now?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you guys see me again?
Yeah.
Good. Sorry about that. You know, it's my usually very stable Mac just froze. Hasn't happened in a long time. You know, I would actually say that the biggest challenge with respect to the EMRs is not the technical aspect of integrating with the EMRs, but it's the business challenge of integrating with the EMRs. And you have companies that are entrenched and have their entrenched business model who are reluctant to kind of give up their turf. So while, you know, interoperability has been mandated in terms of how EMRs work, companies aren't so quick to catch on to that and actually open their APIs, open their databases to other companies. There are a couple of companies that are actually actively doing that. None in the acute care space, though. So we were actually very lucky to form our first alliance with a commercial EMR vendor for a proof of concept, and we're also building to the open source Vista EMR. Let me take you into a demo. So I'm going to go back to screen share here. And what I have here is a screencast. Can you see this?
Yes, we can.
So this is what I'm seeing in glass in my heads-up display. And what I have launched is our patient roster.
And as you said, those are dummy patients. You're not violating any HIPAA standards here.
Not violating any HIPAA standards. I did include it down on the bottom right here. That's Nick Vanterhayden, who didn't mind us putting him in as Carson Kennedy. But yeah, no, everything that you see here is made up, and these are just stock photos.
Great.
So I'm going to, you know, I could use. This is an early demo for us with limited voice interaction. So I'm just going to tap on my display to select Mark Swanson here. And I'm tapping on the side earpiece or temple piece of glass to select. Now what I have is essentially a very traditional view, a tabular view of data that I need to take care of this patient in the emergency department. So I've got tabs on the bottom, CC is chief complaint, I've got vital signs, PMH is past medical history, medications, allergies, labs, and radiology. And we are doing some leveraging of voice and being able to switch between tabs. So I can, for example, swipe forward to get to the vitals tab and then tap into the vitals tab and then scroll within the vitals tab by swiping on my temple. But I can also tap twice on my temple. Radiology. And I go right to the radiology tab. I can tap again. Next image. Next image. Previous image. So all of this is being done using speech recognition that is resident on glass. Nothing is being sent to the cloud. And that was a technological issue that we had to solve because the native speech recognition on glass uses Google APIs and Google servers, and that's sort of a HIPAA non-starter. So we moved for the purposes of navigation within the application, we moved all the speech recognition on board. So we can come out of this. We can see labs. We have on the device as well, and can scroll within the labs field, comparing it to older values. Allergies, patient allergies we get here. Their medication list, so I have a quick list of medications that the patient's on. The Beth Israel team developed an application for ED to hook up to their custom EMR running on Google Glass, and one of their doctors touted the ability to see a patient's allergies on a critical patient in his glass display helped save the patient's life. And we think that we have all of those same advantages, and we'll be able to hook up to commercial EMRs to make that available to people outside of the Beth Israel community. So this is an early prototype of what we have. There's a lot that we are adding. We actually have taken some seed investment, and we are moving to actively develop the technology over the next 4 to 6 months, with an eye towards a pilot beta that will really prove out the technology. We have a high-profile Bay Area advertising and marketing, branding, and user interface design firm who is investing in us to provide those services to help define the user experience, the visual language. This is a really early first pass for us, and we think that it doesn't really do glass justice to simulate a tabular interface on this device. There's lots of very cool things that you can be doing. I should be able to just look up and down and scroll, look at information in many different ways. So it's going to be really fun to flesh that out and play with that and build additional functionality and make the speech recognition more robust, and then get this working in a real ER.
Can you unshare that now? And maybe I'd like to introduce Philip Pellerin, and maybe we can get into a Q&A session here.
Absolutely. So I'm doing.
Let's see.
Is that back to me?
Philip, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I figured out how to unmute myself.
Oh, fantastic. I'd like to bring you into the conversation. Please introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll get into the Q&A.
Sure. My name is Phil Pellerin. I'm advisor to VentureMed. I'm also about 25 years experience in healthcare from the supply chain management, procurement, purchasing, as well as from the non-provider side, similar capacity in industry, Cardinal Health, as well as Boston Scientific. I was a corporate purchasing manager for their neuroradiology division before they sold off to Stryker. So happy to be here, and
cool.
Very fascinating presentation.
Do you have any questions for Carl or Craig?
Not at this time. It's pretty fascinating. It sounds like it's a direct competitor of, from what we all probably know of as Epic and Cerner, right? Or maybe not.
Actually, not. Actually not. We're not building a full stack EMR, and I think that is that's something that we decided early on. These guys are entrenched, and they have huge market share, and to go up against them is not a strategy that we think is viable for us. We want to make ourselves an add-on that makes Cerner and Epic and McKesson and Meditech and Vista more productive. And in doing so, we think that we have a potential exit strategy for us is an acquisition by one of those vendors to preclude us attaching our technology to the other EMRs.
No, that's great. Salman, do you have any questions? Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, I know how to. I forgot about the mute part. A couple of questions. A few on the soft side. First of all, how do you get over the stigma about the glasses? I know there's a lot of talk about it in the field, like people are calling people name and things like that. And would you feel comfortable as a doctor seeing a patient? You know that the Google glasses are connected to your Google network and everything else. How do you feel about that?
Well, so a couple things. I think that we have to lead in this area, and what we have to lead with is transparency, and we have to lead with posted policies. So when we get into the emergency department, there will be plenty of notification all over the place and plenty of opportunity for patients to learn about what we're doing, how we will use glass and how we are not going to use glass, and for anybody who is uncomfortable with that to opt out of being part of or of having glass used for them. Part of the stigma that you're referring to that I think we have to overcome is the notion that these devices are attached to the Google ecosystem, and that your information is going to be mined by Google, and that you're going to be surreptitiously recording people. But at the same time, and I hope this is still true. I think for the most part, people trust their physicians, and if we tell them that we're not going to be using this technology in a nefarious way, but we're here to help them, and we're using the technology to help them, and we're not going to use it in ways that violate their privacy in any way, I strongly believe that people will be okay with that.
I'd like to add into that just real quickly, if Carl, if you were done, and that is, I think in social settings, people may be a little bit more concerned about others wearing a camera equipment that could be surreptitiously recording. However, in a healthcare situation, I think people expect and desire their healthcare professionals to be utilizing the latest and greatest technology. So I feel, and there is a number of indicators that the acceptance of Google Glass and other devices like it in healthcare settings, in professional settings, will become much more accepted.
Have you searched any documentation from a regulatory side, if there is any guidance or anything on the HIPAA compliant, or are there any IC numbers or something like that based on that for the Google glasses, or can you be the lead guy? Maybe it's a time to start up something saying that we are the lead guys and we want to start something.
So there are a number of companies that are working on glass using in the EMR field, and we are talking. I've talked to the founders of all of these companies, and everybody is very has as their primary consideration the HIPAA compliance of this. And we believe that part of HIPAA compliance is actually to take the device out of the Google ecosystem altogether. And the reality is that this is really, it's a piece of hardware first and foremost, and it runs the Android operating system, which can be customized however you want to customize it. So those pieces of the Android system or of the Glass OS that send information out to non-HIPAA compliant servers are going to be disabled, and all of any information that leaves the device will be 100% end-to-end encrypted and only going to trusted servers that are part of the HIPAA ecosystem, and with business associate agreements. This is no different than you wear it on your head, but it's no different from a smartphone in that way, and people are using smartphones for many clinical applications.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
One of the amazing things, the voice-activated interactivity and the ability to request information, I think is fantastic, especially if you don't have to touch the eyepiece, because as you know, one of the problems with iPhones in the hospital, you have all these bacteria, and sometimes, drug-resistant bacteria that all of a sudden you have them on your iPhone.
Right.
And so physicians now have to be more, and nursing staff more worried about carrying iPhones, and we need pockets to put UV sterilization, and that's a concern. So I think if you're a surgeon, what we've seen is surgeons have been recording surgeries and sharing them with medical students, which has been of great value. The other thing is when you look at electronic medical records, I've seen the docs, electronic medical record gets too complex going to the desktop, searching through this morass of data and information to try to get, you only have 5 minutes, not half an hour to review person's information. So I think this is a feature that will enable you to be more efficient. And the other thing that I was thinking about, it's rather interesting, when I was in practice, I used to practice at 4 or 5 hospitals, and one of the biggest nightmares was that you'd go in and you'd get a list of the patients you needed to round on as soon as you walked in the door of the hospital, and you think you saw everybody, and then you go home. At the end of the day, you're at home exhausted and tired at 7 p.m. Then the nurse calls you and said, you forgot to see a patient. And I think this would be really awesome that when you walk through the door in the hospital, you can pull up the list of patients. There may have been a patient that was admitted overnight that you didn't know about that now is in the hospital and you have to see, or vice versa, somebody who you thought went home didn't go home and you forgot to see them. So I think from the standpoint of usability and improving the life of a physician in that regard, it can really be of great value.
Yeah, that's part of what we call, that's the contextual part of it, where, we have information not just about patients, but we have information about you, the person wearing the device, and who your patients are, where you are in the hospital, where you're going, and can leverage that information to bring you relevant information. So, yeah, absolutely, the idea is to make the technology serve the human and not the other way around. The other point that you led with was the fact that the user interfaces on a lot of these PC-based EMRs are, the menus are confusing, they're layered, and we are committed to creating a very flat menu hierarchy, if you will. I mean, and flat and hierarchy are almost oxymoronic together, but the idea is that you can get from anywhere to anywhere else very simply just by using voice to navigate, and the context is tracked by the device. So that's part of the navigation.
Jose, I had a comment.
Yes.
Carl and Craig, I would concur with you relative to the issue of patients, and also Solomon, you're concerned about patients being kind of afraid with a physician wearing glasses. I read a recent article in one of the clinical journals where there was a patient in the emergency room, and the doctor actually, before he even put the Google Glass on, asked the patient out of disclosure if it would be okay if he used the glasses, and the family was absolutely, like you stated, Carl and Craig, very supportive of the physician wearing the glasses as long as it helped them, because the physician wanted to contact I think it was either a dermatologist or a spine surgeon in Paris for a consultation, and it worked rather well. So I think, like you both mentioned, as long as you disclose it up front and ask the patient, I think that should be fine. But we'll explore that, I'm sure, as we go along. Future patients.
Good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And then, Carl, just one question. I was happy to see that you did quantify some savings on the doctor side. But I still think that's light. There's another side, I think, of the accuracy of the documents, for one, and second, the ability for the technology to prevent accidents, because it leads you to a decision tree because of the information in the database, like an interaction with medicines. Like in your example, it actually told you twice. So there must be, I don't know if you thought about how do you quantify the savings of accidents and also accuracy.
Right. Well, one of the things that we need to do is to get to a pilot, and we'll be doing time and motion studies to see the time consumed in using glass versus traditional EMR, we have the ability to sort of record everything that's being done with the device. So we have there's a lot of data that we can collect, and we hope to find, and we expect to find that efficiency is going to be improved, as well as safety and the ability to sort of access critical information, at the moment that you need it without delay, is going to lead to improved patient outcomes. That's what we expect to see as a result of this. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, it does. It's just the point is you just have to get there. You just need some more data points.
Yeah, we need data points, right.
Craig, can I ask you, can you tell us a little bit about the content of your intellectual property?
We're actually formulating our intellectual property portfolio, and there's a lot of different areas that we're addressing here, and we're trying to determine which areas would be the most appropriate to patent. So we haven't yet filed a patent. We are working with a patent professional to do research into which areas.
Have a lot of secret sauce that at this point you can't divulge with regards to your inactivity. So that's okay, and I know you're going to be submitting that soon. Salman, any other questions on your end?
I have two more questions, maybe potentially. Number one is, like, if you are raising money, and if somebody comes to you and asks for, how would you do a pressure test on your product? Like, want to do a clinical trial? Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
we can hear you.
Yeah, so the pressure test for clinical trials, what are the quality metrics or things that would you like to do study on to see that this is very effective in maybe UCSF environment or some environment, and what are those pressure points that you would like to push to the limits, so that I understand the EMR inside the ER emergency versus OR versus GI lab, they're all kind of different environments, but what are the pressure points that you would like to see?
So we'll take that in a phased approach. As an ED doc, the ED is sort of that's my wheelhouse. So that's where we're going to start, because I know that workflow very, very well. And we will be gathering metrics on time to complete tasks. For example, it's easy to quantify the amount of time that somebody needs to review the patient's data prior to seeing the patient. We can see if productivity in terms of patients per hour seen goes up. We can look at the quality of documentation that is produced. There's a lot of areas that are that we want to measure, and as we sort of partner with a clinical institution to develop a clinical trial and a pilot of this, we'll be working with them to sort of figure out exactly what the most meaningful points are. But for us, in terms of making a business case for this, we need to improve physician satisfaction. We need to improve the perception of the quality of interaction with the EMR, the perception of the quality of interaction with patients, and the time that people spend in these sort of menial EMR tasks. And all of those can be addressed. Eventually, after the ED, we'll move on to other acute care specialties in ICU, hospital-based medicine. We actually, Jose and I had a discussion. We both think that nursing is a real target for this as well, because they have very onerous documentation requirements in slow EMRs. In fact, in our hospital, the number of full-time equivalent employees per occupied bed went up 10% when we implemented an electronic record. So, that's another data point that we can gather and see if, with using this technology, are you able to reduce staffing and maintain the same quality of care or improve your quality of care?
Well, one of the things we had talked about was, for instance, when a lot of the EMRs, the nurses have to go back to the nurses station to enter their notes, and there's so much more documentation that's required that is taking away from their time at the bedside with the patient. Mm-hmm. So a technology like this could improve their efficiency dramatically and reduce errors and improve patient satisfaction, which is a very important factor here.
Yep. And why document separately from the clinical interaction, right? I mean, the clinical interaction should be the documentation. That's the holy grail, really. And it's really, the medical legal system that we're serving, and we're serving sort of governmental regulation and requirements to document to certain standards to get paid, when the reality is most doctors want to get in there, see the patient, do their work, and if they didn't have to document it all, they'd be really happy, right? Yeah. So if we can make the documentation process as painless as possible using these tools, we're going to have a lot of happy clinicians.
Well, we're 45 minutes into our broadcast, and I'd like to kind of bring it to a close. I want to thank everybody for participating today. I want to thank our audience for listening to our wonderful event. I also want to remind everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And every week, Thursdays at 5 p.m., we're planning, that's Pacific Standard Time, planning on highlighting the most innovative healthcare startup companies. And again, medxforward.com is the website for accredited investors to log in and participate in investing in these companies as well as advising them. And venture-med.com is the website where our angel investors aggregate and share information. So thank you, everybody, and have a fantastic week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for
that.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.